recognized his son's strengths. When the U.S. War Department offered to pay tuition for John and his cousin, Elias Boudinot, at a missionary school in Connecticut, Major Ridge grabbed the chance.
Ustikleesti, Jijanki Osi, Hala, Jatasani, Haldekwai, Nudle, Asiski, Jijanki Osi, Tunodagoha, Iskaleloski.
So Ridge, eh?
John Ridge grew to manhood among white Christian educators, absorbing the lessons of the Bible and the U.S. Constitution alike. Even 900 miles away from Cherokee territory, he never betrayed a hint of pain at his separation from home and family.
Even from his earliest school days, John Ridge is described by his teachers as being cold, a little bit aloof, as being haughty. They compare him to his cousin Buck, who became Elias Boudinot, who was much friendlier, much more congenial, but not as good a student. John Ridge was brilliant.
The faculty selected John Ridge out of all the Indian students at Cornwall to prepare an essay for President James Monroe. In it, he sang the praises of his Christian benefactors and his own parents. My father and mother are both ignorant of the English language, but it is astonishing to see them exert all their power to have their children educated, like the whites. For all his scholarly achievements, John Ridge's fragile health failed in the New England winters. He spent much of his time in his room, attended by the school steward's daughter, Sarah Bird Northrop, until a doctor alerted her mother that the two seemed to have fallen in love. When Sarah confessed, the Northrops sent her away to live with relatives. The entire affair kept secret. It took nearly 2 years, but John won over Sarah's parents. He regained his health, qualified as a lawyer, and promised to take care of their daughter.
Do thus solemnly and sincerely engage in promise.
I will, with the help of God.
And you, Miss Sarah Bird Northrop, with your right hand, take Mr. John Ridge by his right hand. In the presence of God and these witnesses, do take John Ridge, whom you now hold by the hand, to be your wedded husband, to have and to hold from this day forward. Cherish and keep him in sickness and in health, and forsaking all others, keep only unto him, conducting yourself toward him in all respects as a kind and tender, virtuous, and faithful wife.
This marriage is a sin in God's eyes.
The reaction of New England whites, enlightened, progressive New England whites, makes a mark on him. He had been told, get an education, take up Western ways, you can be part of us. He will never believe whites in exactly the same way again.
An Indian is almost considered accursed. The scum of the earth are considered sacred in comparison. If an Indian is educated, yet he is an Indian, and the most stupid and illiterate white man will disdain and triumph over this worthy individual.
While John Ridge was away in Connecticut, John Ross was a young man on the rise. A trader like his father, Ross cashed in selling food and provisions to the well-funded Christian missions sprouting around the Cherokee Nation. He married a Cherokee woman and made a home on 420 prime planting acres. But Ross was drawn more and more into the troubled state of Cherokee diplomacy. The Cherokee Nation's long alliance with the United States was fraying. Washington was dragging its feet on payments owed under the terms of earlier treaties and strong-arming the Cherokees to sell off more territory.
You can just imagine them.
The Cherokee Nation had formed a powerful new central government to push back, determined never again to cede one more foot of land. And they needed able English-speaking men, like John Ross, to articulate the Cherokee position to the United States government.
Quite concerned.
John Ross was not from a prominent Cherokee family the way John Ridge was. But Ridge takes John Ross kind of under his wing as a protege. Here in John Ross, he's got someone who's only an 8th Cherokee, is very familiar with white society because of his father, equally adept at negotiating both of those worlds.
Each is much like yours.
With strong leaders like Ross in the Ridges, the Cherokees could hold the United States government to its word for a while. But the situation on the ground was changing nonetheless. As dreams of cotton wealth drove prospective planters deep into the interior South, other tribes were giving up huge swaths of neighboring lands. The 14,000 Cherokees found themselves surrounded on every side by American settlers. Scores of whites began to scramble onto Cherokee farmland. A small group of Cherokees had already taken America up on its offer of new land west of the Mississippi, in Arkansas Territory. But the Cherokee National Council, to a man, was still confident it had the strength to stand its ground. Major Ridge, for one, had much to defend. Nearly 10 million acres owned in common by the tribe, and his own plantation. According to the U.S. Superintendent of Indian Affairs, Ridge's farm was in a higher state of cultivation, and his buildings better than those of any other person in that region, the whites not excepted. In 20 years, Ridge had cleared nearly 300 acres for cash crops, cotton, tobacco, wheat, and indigo. He oversaw his own orchard, dairy, and vineyard, and as many as 30 slaves.
John Ross owned slaves, and John Ridge, when he got married, Major Ridge gave him like 20 slaves, and so he was a slave owner also.
About 8% of Cherokees owned slaves. They were mainly the mixed blood elite. But more and more, that mixed blood elite is adopting the lifestyle of the Southern planter culture.
So well with tobacco in the past that we're thinking of adding to that, or perhaps even some cattle.
Siwa, Wonka, how are you, Ga?
Well, since this square are gone here, so go long, that's can use doggy go near now a jail you wish on me. I say no, that's the end on the Queeska.
My father says the rains were heavy here and the cotton was planted late. But cotton prices are rising again.
Who young is on? Who go this day? Queeska, they just
My father apologizes to you, ma'am. He says the cost of your fine dresses is going up.
Huh, a jailer.
Not all Cherokees welcomed these new opportunities. Civilization was beginning to draw hard class distinctions that had never existed in traditional Cherokee society. The lives of most full-blood Cherokees were still marked by loss. What little remained of their old hunting grounds was played out. They depended almost entirely on subsistence farming, and they worried that their leaders were enthralled to the ways of the whites. But there were still elemental ties that bound all Cherokees, and change that benefited all, including a signal advance by a Cherokee named Sequoyah.
Sequoyah was devoted to enabling the Cherokee people to have at their command an essential power that he saw white society had. That being the ability to write in the Cherokee language. Ultimately, he did something that no one has ever done, and that was create a system of reading and writing in a language when he himself could not read or write in any other language.
There was one character for every syllable. So with 86 syllables, a Cherokee speaker could learn to write in several weeks. It was actually much more efficient and effective than you could ever ask of English.
Within a matter of a few years, the Cherokee Nation was literate. The Cherokee Phoenix, the translation of the Bible into Cherokee, family stories were written down. Medicine people wrote down all of their formulas for healing. It literally revolutionized Cherokee society.
See what Washington has to say.
At the end of the 1820s, Major Ridge saw a new Cherokee nation on the rise.